Welcome to Seniors Alive. This program interviews people who work with seniors to enable them to have a full life in their later years, and also interviews seniors who have such a life. Tonight I have with me Karen Kleinhaus, who is I have to get this right, a driving generalist and a consultant in the field of occupational therapy. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
So what is an occupational therapist, and how did you get interested in it in the first place?
An occupational therapist is someone who works in the medical field, and what we do is we help people to be able to function to their utmost capacity, their optimal capacity. We're not looking necessarily at their occupation, but what they're occupied doing on a daily basis. And for this particular interview, one of the things that we address is driving, since most of us like to be behind the wheel of a car. So, occupational therapists address all of our basic activities of daily living, including feeding, dressing ourselves, toileting, bathing, preparing a simple meal, doing our managing our household affairs, and then driving as well.
And that's a good listing, Karen, because I know that pretty much everybody knows what a physical therapist is, but for some reason some people don't know about occupational therapy. And so how did you decide to go into that field?
My parents are really service-oriented people, and they raised us to really engage in the community. I have a grandmother that I cared for as a child. It was my job to walk her around the block, to help her to be able to make coffee, Swedish coffee, for her friends and neighbors, and then ultimately I helped her with her self-care, getting undressed, ready for the evening, or so forth. So that's sort of what launched me into it as a young child. I have an aunt who worked with special needs children. I helped her with Special Olympics, and my best friend had a brother who had cerebral palsy, and he was really my biggest teacher, because he really showed me that through the severity of his situation, that he was capable of extraordinary things. And so I really knew that was the path that I wanted to follow, to just really help people to realize their full potential in whatever their dreams are.
You know, when I first started working in the field of seniors and living fully alive 16 years ago, I also took a lot of inspiration from younger people with disabilities, because, you know, so often older people feel like when arthritis sets in or some disability, it's all over and, you know, can't do any of those things. And to look at what young people who have some kind of ability, handicap, are doing, it gives the rest of us inspiration. And so I know that there are myths around out there in the world about older drivers. What are some of the myths that in your work you are helping to dispel?
Well, the first myth is that older drivers are bad drivers, and that's absolutely not true. So older drivers are very experienced drivers. They've been driving a long time. So, and they've really seen through the ages how transportation has changed. So in actuality, older drivers are pretty good drivers. And so that is one of your biggest myths.
Yeah. And how about another one?
The second myth is that people, the general public, believes there must be a certain age when you have to stop driving. and that's also a myth. So especially in the state of California, we're not able to discriminate against anyone for age or for medical diagnosis. So I have plenty of people that I know that are driving well into their 90s, and they are very safe drivers. So,
well, I know that my mother was in Colorado when we began to be concerned about her driving, and that was one of the reasons we tried to convince her to move out here after her husband died. So she finally moved out, and the big plan was that she would drive her Lincoln Continental out from Colorado with my stepsister's help. Well, it turned out that I was going to be in a wedding, and she wanted to get here for that, and so she flew and left the car with strict instructions and understanding that this car would be driven out, because we had talked to her a bit about not driving anymore, and she usually is very sweet, but this was a button that just, nope, this was, not even in the realm of consideration. Anyway, she got out here to California and realized she'd have to get a California driver's license. That was one problem. And then she saw the roads and streets here in Grass Valley, Nevada City, and that also caused her to finally, with great regret, to say, well, go ahead and get rid of the car. But I know from having gone through this with her how difficult it is sometimes to face up to warning signs. And I think maybe the best approach I'd like to take with this is, let's say someone, an adult child like me, is concerned about their parent. And I know you do pre-driving assessments. So what would I as an adult child do, or an adult older driver worried about their own driving? What would they do to get some help from your field, from your department?
if you yourself are worried about your driving, and one of those signs might be a lack of self-confidence in your driving skills, or a knowledge that you're starting to limit your driving behaviors, and you'd like to have someone review a few things with you, one of the things you can do is talk to your doctor. Your doctor is really your confidant, and your doctor can advise you on certain things that are possible for you to do, one of which is come to an occupational therapist. So coming to an occupational therapist, what we do is we offer a pre-driving assessment. It's in a non-threatening environment, it's in the clinic, and what we do is we review all of your systems holistically. So I'm going to look at the way a person moves, carries their body, gets in and out of the vehicle, how they negotiate getting up a curb if they were going to go to a grocery store or the clinic. I look at how they move their head. Do they have the range of motion to be able to use their full range? For example, to look over their shoulder when they're backing up for the car. I look at their range of motion in their arms, and also their legs and their feet. I look at their ability. The range is important for turning that steering wheel and negotiating our controls. Okay, and then I also look at muscle strength to see how strong you are. You need 7 pounds of grip in order to be able to turn that steering wheel. But if you have arthritis and pain, sometimes you don't have that 7 pounds of grip, and we need to work on that a little bit for you, beef you up in strength.
So that's something that you even can remedy a bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now I'm also going to look at vision, because vision is critical. We use 85% of our driving skills involve vision. So many of us don't take the simple steps of going to our optometrist or our ophthalmologist once a year to make sure that our prescriptions are correct. But sometimes we have other vision issues. Let's say you might have diabetes, and diabetes can affect your vision. Or you might have glaucoma or macular degeneration. So I'm going to check the vision to see how that might affect function. Okay. Then I also look at reaction timing to see how quickly we respond, how quickly we process information. Because, you know, many people are very intelligent and witty, and they really know their stuff. But sometimes as we age, that processing time gets slower. And so we have to be able to determine whether that's going to affect their safety behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah, I know that's one thing that a lot of people worry about.
The other thing is that, remember, behind the wheel of a car, you're usually going more than 25 miles an hour. So that means that decisions need to be made quickly. And there cannot be a time delay for many decisions because, you know, emergencies happen in an instant and we have to be ready and prepared. So these are the types of things that we look at in the clinic. If there's something that we think that we can remedy, I think that it's only appropriate to do everything that we can to beef that up. And then if we find that we're not able to remedy that, then we talk about other options.
Well, show the listening audience your simple adaptive devices here, because these are both such a good example of something very simple you can do when someone is having a little trouble with, say, arthritis or moving in the car, that help people continue to drive and have the quality of life possible as a result. But it's a very simple occupational therapy type solution.
Well, occupational therapists are really notorious, actually, for being very thrifty and efficient. We don't necessarily need a lot of fancy gadgets. And one of the things you can do is just take a simple necktie. And this would be for a scenario where, let's say, you've got some lack of range of motion or strength in your arms. Maybe you've had a rotator cuff tear or some kind of shoulder problem where you're having trouble reaching for the seatbelt to snap it into place. And so one of the things you can do is to take a necktie and you would sew it or tie it very tightly to the seatbelt at a higher level like this. And then when you need to grab that seatbelt, rather than coming way up high to get the little metal piece, you'll just come over, reach for the necktie, pull it over, and snap it in place.
Yeah.
So this is it's a nice device. The other way that we use this might be to loop it around the back of the car. The tailgate that goes up usually has a handle. If you loop it around the handle and knot it, you can just pull on the tie to get that tailgate to come back down for you.
Yeah.
So.
And how about the other prop?
The other prop is just a simple pillowcase. And the reason why this is nice is because you can fold it to the right size, stick it in your seat, and if you have trouble rotating to get in and out of your vehicle, the pillowcase is going to slide for you pretty easily. So these are just two things you probably have at home and that you can instantaneously try.
Yeah, I love the fact they're just small adjustments, but they make a big difference. And in terms of resources, let's talk about the two books. If we could show the slides of the books on the screen there, Karen. Let's see, we've got We Need to Talk there. What's that one?
Well, both of these books are produced by the Hartford, and the Hartford is an insurance company that has a tremendous investment in keeping people safe on the road. They're a fabulous resource, and We Need to Talk is a booklet about starting to generate conversations about driving. So sometimes people are nervous, spouses are nervous to talk to each other about driving habits. You know, they're afraid that one individual might get a little on the defense or get their feelings hurt. So this is a really great guidebook to help you start those conversations, one of the things I love in this book is a checklist of signs, warning signs for older drivers, so that you can look at it together, families can look at it together and see what kind of warning signs are happening at the current time, and how to gauge driving behavior. So
to be able to use that to look at together, if you're an adult child, and to be able to look at it together with your parent. I'm just thinking, we have this Adult Children of Aging Parent Support Group that meets here on the fourth Monday at Quail Ridge Library. Put a plug in there, 5 o'clock, and I'm going to order some of those because many of the adult children over the years in this group have had issues with parents driving.
Now, these books are free to the public.
Oh, great.
So they are a fantastic resource for generating those conversations. One of the things I also like to do in terms of generating conversations is when someone does come and see an occupational therapist, I like to have them have someone come with them. Because it's really nice to have that other person watch when we use standardized evidence-based testing. And then when they leave, there's something to talk about. Gee, you did really great on that test. Or, I noticed you were having problems with that test. What do you think? And these types of conversations are wonderful because you have had an experience that you can then share together, which will lead to an intimate conversation. Sometimes you can't have it that easy. Sometimes you need to revisit it several times and just express your gentle concern. You don't really want to be too overbearing with this. This is driving is a dignity issue. It's all about independence, and it's something that's very, very important to people. So it needs to be treated with a gentle soul.
And one thing you mentioned earlier was the importance of, if you're really concerned as an adult child or spouse, to take a road drive with your loved one to actually experience yourself their reaction time. And I imagine if you're really scared to death to do that, that's a very good sign that maybe you have an unsafe driver on your hands.
It is. I think lots of times, we forget to drive with our parents, and it's an important thing to do. If your parent doesn't want you in the car with them, it's you might want to suggest to them that you'll follow them to see how they're doing, and that's another way to not be secretive about this. Concern is a loving concern for their safety, but you can follow them in your car to see how they're doing. Getting that sense of how they're doing is important. I love to drive with my dad. He's 84, and he lives in the LA area, and my dad can negotiate those freeways like nobody else, and it amazes me. But it's important that I see that.
And how about the other book that we have, At the Crossroads?
At the Crossroads is a book that is designed for addressing dementia, because dementia is an issue, and one of the forms of dementia is Alzheimer's. That's the most common form, and people who have dementia are drivers, and but dementia is a progressive disorder, and so at some point in time we have to decide to stop driving. So dementia, is an important thing to learn about when it comes to driving. And this has a wonderful tool inside, and it's called an agreement about driving. And what that is that the individual who is the driver picks someone who's important in their life to trust, and they make a written agreement together saying that when it's time for me to stop driving, that I will trust this person that I've chosen to advise me, and I will do as they ask.
Wow.
So it's a nice conversation piece to talk about. You know, it's okay to mull about it for a little bit, but making the commitment to choose that person and sign that agreement is a really nice step in faith.
And again, a very gentle approach. I think sometimes people wait too long because they don't have images of what a gentle approach about discussing the topic, what a gentle approach might be. And so then it gets to be a crisis, and then it's not a gentle approach. It's, you know, taking the keys away or something. And as you said, people really have their own independent lifestyle wrapped up in their minds with the ability to drive. So what are some of the ways you've seen people who have had to quit driving make up the difference? You know, we both agree, I know, that it's not the end of the world. There are good alternatives to driving. So let's talk about those a bit.
Well, one of the first things that I like to advise people is to really start to look into this before you need it. And because none of us are going to be driving forever. And it behooves all of us to be able to educate ourselves about what's available in your community. So in our community, we have telecare, and some of the independent living centers have their own transportation available. Lots of people don't choose to take that. But I'm going to challenge people here today to really step up to the plate and try it. You know, because if you can get on board with this and practice, then it won't be scary when the time comes. But another alternative that we also have is that we have private transportation available, such as a taxi. And if a person does need to surrender their driving and, let's say, sell their car, one of the things that works out really well is if you take the investment, let's say you sold your car for $7,000 and took that, put it in a bank account, and picked out several different transportation providers, taxis or other, and designated that money for those services. All you have to do is pick up the phone, call, say, I'm ready for a ride, I need to go from here to there, and you're not having to drive in a vehicle with a group of people. You don't have to worry about your timing so much, and it's readily available to you. You get to know your drivers. So there are solutions.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how much it costs to operate a car with insurance and upkeep and gas, and then the sale of the car. That creates quite a pot of money that, you know, is worth many cab rides. And of course, telecare is wonderful. Again, with my mom, when she had to quit driving, I went with her the first time. I helped her fill out the paperwork, and then I went with her the first time as a companion. And so she got into the hang of it that way, and boy, at one point she was just taking telecare everywhere, and she was so worried when there were funding concerns, you know. So it's wonderful. You do have to get into the swing of lining it up 24 hours in advance. And so I think a combination maybe of being open to doing cabs and telecare, but your idea of trying it out before you have to is really a good one, to give people that feeling that even if you quit driving, there's still lots of life left to live.
Absolutely, and you don't have the stress of being behind the wheel. You don't have the stress of having to make the decisions. You can still you can still be thinking about, well, what you're going to be doing next, and not what you have to do right now.
Yeah. Now, we have had on the screen your contact information. Maybe we can put that up there again. And also, there is a very easy to remember website on this matter called eldersafety.org. What kinds of things would people find on that website, eldersafety.org?
Eldersafety.org is a resource website, so that if you're looking for an occupational therapist to be able to help you with either pre-driving in the clinic assessments or something behind the wheel, you can go and find an occupational therapist in any area in California. So, and then they also delineate between generalists and specialists. And a specialist is going to be able to help an individual with more complicated matters, some of the lifts for the vehicle, some of the hand controls and adaptive devices.
That's a
things
specialist?
Like that. That would be an occupational therapist who's a driving specialist, a certified driving specialist.
More the equipment, the adaptive equipment kinds of things.
Exactly. And on-the-road safety for more difficult situations. When someone comes for a pre-driving assessment, one of the things I really like to do is get them behind the wheel of a car. I don't do that myself, but I do refer to private driving schools that we have. So we have a good relationship with private driving schools, with the Department of Motor Vehicles, with the CHP. We work together as a team because we really want seniors driving safely as long as possible.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful note on which to end the show. The time is up, if you can believe it, and I think we covered almost everything that we wanted to cover that was really crucial. Just remember, folks, that if you do end up having to quit driving, it's not the end of the world. There are lots of options, and there are things that you can do before that time to ensure that you are a safe driver. And one of those is to have a talk with your doctor. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in with us. I want to thank the crew. Very smooth show. And at least I hope it was. It felt smooth from our end of things. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in this evening.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Cracked up.